Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I turned 42 on a Thursday, which in itself isn't supposed to mean anything monumental, but somehow it felt like the kind of year you either get noticed or get forgotten. And this time, it wasn't just a feeling. I woke up with no expectations, just a little hope clinging to the corner of my chest, like maybe they'd surprise me this time. I checked my phone first thing, still half asleep, scrolling through the notifications with the slow, dull thumb of someone who already knows they're not going to see what they want. There was a notification from my bank, one from Uber Eats, two spam emails about refinancing my non-existent mortgage, and silence from the people who raised me. Nothing from my mom. Nothing from my dad. Not a damn word from Chloe either. I waited an hour, then two. Made coffee. Stared out the window like I was in some sad indie movie. Around lunchtime, I checked again. Still nothing. By dinner, I gave up pretending it didn't sting. That night, I sat on my couch with a cheap bottle of wine and a frozen pizza that hadn't cooked evenly, and the silence in my apartment felt louder than it had in months. Not just silence in sound, but a silence that came with its own weight, like being wrapped in invisible concrete. I thought about texting them, saying something sarcastic like, "Guess who just turned the age you all pretend doesn't exist," but I didn't. I refused to give them that. If they didn't remember on their own, they didn't deserve a reminder. The next morning, I still tried to rationalize it. Maybe they got the day wrong. Maybe something happened. Maybe mom had the flu, or dad was too busy dealing with the plumbing again, or Chloe was off on one of her digital detox weekends. That little voice in my head, trained since childhood to find reasons for their behavior, started spinning excuses before I even asked for them. But then, 7 days later, I saw the post. It was like being slapped by something beautiful. Chloe was tagged in a series of photos that looked like a Hallmark movie got drunk and fell in love with Instagram. She was smiling in front of a waterfall in Maui, holding a tiny cupcake with a sparkler on it while wearing this sleek white sundress that looked like it cost more than my rent. And there, dangling off her perfectly manicured wrist, was a Cartier bracelet. The kind I used to stare at in magazines and wonder if I'd ever be worth something like that to anyone. My mom had commented first, "Happy birthday to my radiant angel, my miracle girl." Dad followed right after with, "You deserve the world, sweetheart." There were heart emojis, sunset emojis, more comments from family, friends, cousins, even people I hadn't seen since high school. It was like a damn digital parade. I wasn't mentioned once. Not even a polite, "We wish Lauren could have come." I scrolled through the pictures again and again, each time hoping I'd missed something. But no, I hadn't been forgotten. I had been deliberately excluded. There's a difference. And I finally felt it. You know, I used to think being the older daughter meant you were automatically supposed to be stronger, more independent, the one who didn't need the fuss or the praise. That was the story they told me my whole life. "You're mature, Lauren, you understand things better." Chloe was the delicate one, the star, the one who needed protecting. It was a subtle thing at first. Smaller gifts, fewer photos in the hallway, but it grew over time like a rust you didn't notice until the whole damn structure started groaning. They always told me I was too sensitive, that I misread things. But I didn't misread that bracelet. I didn't misread first-class flights to Maui. I didn't misread the fact that I was nowhere in that group chat that exploded with "Happy birthday, Angel," and glitter gifts. I wasn't invited. I wasn't acknowledged. I wasn't even an afterthought. So I did something I'd never done before, not once in 42 years of bending over backward for a family that only saw me when it was convenient. I picked up my phone, opened the group text, and quietly removed myself. Then I went into my contacts, found mom, dad, Chloe, and I blocked them. No warning, no message, just silence. My own kind of birthday gift to myself. It felt petty, sure. It felt cold, but it also felt like oxygen for the first time in months. Like I wasn't choking on other people's needs or expectations. Like maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to keep being the daughter who always forgives and never gets seen. And I didn't tell them why. Not a word. I just disappeared. Because sometimes, the only way to make them hear you is to stop speaking entirely. There's a strange kind of peace in silence when it's something you choose, not something forced on you like it was when you were a kid, sitting at the dinner table, trying to explain how something felt wrong and watching your parents nod politely like they were listening, but knowing deep down their minds were already on Chloe's ballet recital or whatever thing she had coming up next. I didn't block them in a rage, and I didn't cry about it either, which surprised me, because that kind of silence used to tear me up inside. But this time, I just sat there on my couch, phone in hand, looking at the 3 red blocked labels and thinking, damn, maybe this is what taking your power back looks like. It's not loud or explosive like people imagine. Sometimes, it's just shutting a door and not waiting around to see if they'll knock. Growing up, I was the backup singer to Chloe's solo act, and trust me, she hit every high note with glitter on her eyelashes and everyone clapping before the song was even over. I was the responsible one, the helper, the one who got praised for not making a fuss. On my 8th birthday, I remember getting a My Little Pony set, used scuffed hooves, one of the tails matted, and being told Chloe really liked them too, so I should let her borrow the ones she liked best. They never came back. On my 16th birthday, I got a cake that had both our names on it, even though hers wasn't for another 6 weeks. When I pointed it out, Mom just said, well, it's more efficient this way, like we were splitting cell phone bills, not milestones. By the time I turned 30, I stopped celebrating altogether. There's only so many times you can feel like an afterthought before you just stop expecting to be thought of at all. That was the thing about my family. They didn't need to be cruel to be neglectful. They just needed to keep choosing convenience over care, and they did, again and again, until their choices turned into a pattern and that pattern became tradition. I played along for years, smiled through holidays where I got passive-aggressive gifts like wrinkle cream and cookbooks I never asked for, stood beside Chloe in bridesmaid dresses that looked like cupcake wrappers, and told myself this was what family meant. Compromise. Forgiveness. Understanding. But something shifted this time. Maybe it was turning 42. Maybe it was realizing that the only people who remembered my birthday were coworkers I barely spoke to and one ex-boyfriend who still drunk texts me twice a year. Or maybe it was just watching my little sister twirl in a damn sundress on a Maui cliffside while our parents practically crowned her queen of the universe. Either way, something inside me finally snapped, but not in a loud, dramatic way. It was quiet, like a string being cut. The first few days after the block were weird. I kept checking my phone out of habit, half expecting to see Chloe's daily photo dump or Mom's weather updates from their front porch, like she was running the neighborhood news. But there was nothing, and that nothing started to feel good. I got back into therapy, something I'd stopped doing because my last therapist kept asking me to reframe the positives of my childhood, like hand-me-down trauma could be turned into a growth opportunity if I just journaled hard enough. This time, I found someone who didn't flinch when I said my mom weaponized affection and my dad treated silence like a parenting strategy. I also started boxing, which felt ridiculous at first. Me, throwing punches in oversized gloves, trying not to trip over my own feet, but there was something weirdly satisfying about the sound of my fist hitting the pad, like every "you're overreacting" and every "Chloe's going through a lot right now" I ever heard was finally getting knocked out of my system. The trainer said I had good form, but I knew better. I wasn't fighting for fitness. I was fighting for myself, for every version of me that swallowed things whole just to keep the family calm. Somewhere around the 3rd week of silence, I started to feel free. Not the rom-com kind of free, where I dance through the streets in a new dress, but the grown-ass woman kind of free, where I open my fridge and eat dinner without a voice in my head wondering if Mom would call today. I even started sleeping better. It's amazing what your brain can do when it's not constantly bracing for another emotional pothole. And then, right when I'd almost gotten comfortable with the idea of them being permanently out of my life, the text came. I hadn't seen that name pop up since the day I hit block, but somehow, there it was, Diane. My mom. I hadn't even saved her under mom for years now, not since she started calling Chloe sweetheart and me, well, Lauren, you know how you are. The message was short, carefully worded like she was trying to be casual but couldn't quite keep the urgency out of it. Can we talk? Something's wrong with Chloe. She's not herself. And just like that, I felt it again, that quiet tightening in my chest, like the air had shifted and I was about to be pulled back into the same orbit I'd finally broken free from. Only this time, I wasn't sure I wanted to come back. Because if Chloe wasn't herself, then who the hell had she really been all along? I didn't answer the text, not because I didn't care, and not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because after years of being treated like the family benchwarmer who gets sent in only when things fall apart, I finally realized I was under no obligation to show up just because someone else's world was cracking. I read it twice, slowly, staring at the familiar clipped phrasing that Mom always used when she wanted something but didn't want to sound like she wanted something. Can we talk? Something's wrong with Chloe. She's not herself. No warmth, no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just concern for Chloe, always Chloe, like she was the only person in the whole damn family with a soul worth saving. I didn't reply, but that didn't mean I didn't look. I typed Chloe's name into Instagram the way someone Googles an old flame, knowing full well it's going to stir something up, but doing it anyway because curiosity doesn't care about your boundaries. Her profile, as expected, looked like the digital showroom for some lifestyle brand built on aesthetic bliss. Smooth skin, organic lattes, golden light cascading through perfectly arranged throw pillows. Her bio still said wife, dreamer, mama of two, lover of life. The usual fluff she spoon-fed to her 32,000 followers who thought she walked on clouds and woke up smiling in silk pajamas every day. But when I started scrolling, I noticed something off, something small at first, but noticeable if you knew how to look past the filters and the hashtags. The captions had changed. They'd gone from bubbly and curated, Sunday brunch with my boys, or another magical morning with my littles to something more cryptic. A picture of her staring out a window with the quote, "Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who cry alone." Another with her hands around a coffee mug, looking away from the camera, the caption reading, "Not everything that glitters is love." And then one with just text, white font on a black background, "Some storms come to clear your path." They weren't full-blown confessions, but they weren't the usual fluff either. It was the kind of thing women post when they want to say something without saying it, when they're cracking behind the curtain but aren't ready to rip it down. I watched as her likes dropped a little. Comments shifted from "gorgeous as always" to "stay strong, girl," and "here if you need to talk." Something had shifted in her world, and whatever it was, she wasn't hiding it very well. I didn't want to care, but I did. Because no matter how many Cartier bracelets or first-class tickets she got, she was still my sister. And even if she'd never been particularly kind to me, I didn't like the way her eyes looked in that last post, tired in a way you can't filter out, hollow around the edges like she was running on fumes. That's when I got the message. It was from Lydia, an old friend of mine from high school who still followed both Chloe and me on social media. We hadn't talked in years, but out of the blue she messaged me, "Hey, not trying to stir the pot, but did you hear about Rick?" My stomach did that slow, queasy flip it used to do before a bad breakup. I typed back, "No." "What about him?" and watched the three dots appear and disappear like a warning sign I couldn't read fast enough. Lydia sent back a screenshot. It was a Reddit thread from one of those anonymous influencer gossip subs where people post rumors, sightings, and digital breadcrumbs about people with curated lives. I didn't want to look. I clicked anyway. The thread was titled, "Popular Momfluencer's Husband Caught in Hotel Scandal, Receipts Included." And there it was, screenshots of messages, a blurry photo of Rick in a hotel lobby with a woman who wasn't Chloe, a timestamp that matched the weekend he and Chloe were supposedly at a marriage retreat. and a link to a now-deleted TikTok where a woman said she'd been love-bombed by a married man with a wife who sells cottagecore lies for a living. I stared at the screen, mouth dry, eyes scanning for anything that made it not true. But the screenshots were real. The usernames lined up. The woman even mentioned details about Rick's job that weren't public. Whoever she wasn't guessing. She knew him. And just like that, the glitter cracked. All the little things Chloe had posted, all the vague quotes and tired stares, they suddenly made sense. Her world was coming apart at the seams, and she was trying to stitch it together with curated captions and espresso foam hearts. I felt something complicated. Pity, maybe. Sadness, definitely. But also a quiet, bitter kind of clarity. Because while they were busy forgetting my birthday, Rick was out collecting hotel keycards. While my parents were praising Chloe for her radiance, her marriage was rotting from the inside. And now that it was falling apart, they wanted me to pick up the pieces again. I sat with it for a long time, not moving, not responding to Lydia, just watching the thread refresh every few minutes as strangers speculated about whether Chloe knew, whether she'd stay, whether Rick would face any real consequences. I didn't know the answers. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't about to play the fixer this time. Not for them. Not for her. Not for anyone. And definitely not for a family that only remembers you when there's a mess to clean up. But something about that Reddit thread, it wasn't just scandal. It was personal. Too personal. There were details in there only someone close could know. And that made me wonder, just for a second, who else had been watching Chloe's life fall apart from behind the screen? When I tell you I didn't plan to get dragged into the full mess, I mean it in the most honest, exhausted, soul-weary way possible. Because if you'd asked me a month ago whether I would find myself sitting on my couch at 2 a.m. with dry eyes and a burning chest, scrolling through a Reddit post about my brother-in-law's sex life, I would have laughed and said, "Not my circus, not my clowns." But there I was, going deeper and deeper into the thread that started with a few suspicious messages and turned into something much bigger, uglier, and stickier than I'd expected. The thread had been updated 3 times in the last 24 hours, and each time it came with more screenshots, more receipts, and a disturbing pattern of behavior that made it clear Rick wasn't just some guy who made one mistake at a conference hotel after too many whiskeys. No, this man was a full-blown serial cheater, the kind who keeps burner accounts and sends the same damn compliment to 3 different women like he's running a script. One of the screenshots was a selfie he sent from what was very clearly my sister's guest bathroom. Her ugly seafoam green towels were unmistakable, captioned, "Wish you were here instead." The woman he sent it to had posted it with a note that read, "Ladies, if your man sends you selfies from a bathroom with seashell soap dispensers, run." There were messages going back months, possibly years, and the most recent ones were from a woman named Natalie, who claimed she had no idea he was married until she stumbled on Chloe's Instagram. According to her, Rick had said he was separated but cohabiting for the kids, which was just sleazy guy code for "I'm lying to you with my whole chest." Natalie said she felt sick. She apologized to the internet, which, frankly, she didn't owe anyone, and she posted a picture of a handwritten note he'd left at her place after a weekend together. It said, "You make me feel seen." I've never had that before. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. And still, I said nothing. Not to Chloe. Not to my parents. Not even to Lydia, who kept texting me updates like she was my own personal TMZ. I just watched the whole thing unravel like someone staring at a slow-motion car crash. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was that I finally understood how little my voice had ever mattered to these people. For years I'd been the one they came to with their problems, their disasters, their cleanup needs. I was the fixer, the emotional janitor. But now that the house was burning down, I had no desire to put the flames out. Let it burn, I thought. Let the perfect family image go up in smoke. But then something strange happened. The silence broke, but not for me. My phone, which had been blessedly quiet for weeks, lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Missed calls, voicemails, emails with subject lines like, "Please call us and we need to talk." My mother left me a voice message that started with, "Lauren, sweetheart," as if she hadn't spent the last decade saying my name like it was a scratch on her new car. My father, usually mute and awkward, sent me a message that said, "We miss you. We realize now we were wrong." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Where was this energy when I was sitting alone on my birthday eating a frozen pizza? And then, because the universe loves timing, Chloe showed up. Unannounced. No warning. Just knocked on my apartment door like we were two kids again, and she needed help sneaking back into the house after breaking curfew. I stared at her through the peephole for a full minute before opening it. She looked awful. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun that hadn't been curated for Instagram. She was wearing a wrinkled sweatshirt I recognized from our college years and no makeup. Her eyes were red, puffy, and hollow in a way that made her look like a shell of herself. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood there holding a coffee cup like it was armor. I didn't invite her in. I didn't move. Finally, she said, I didn't know where else to go. It hit me in a place I didn't expect, some part of me still soft enough to ache for her, even after everything. I let her in, mostly out of curiosity. She sat down on the edge of my couch like she didn't want to make a dent. For a minute we just sat there in silence, the kind that hums with too many unsaid things. She started crying, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the silent, shoulder-shaking kind that makes you wonder how long someone's been holding it in. I waited. I didn't offer her a tissue. I didn't touch her. I wanted her to feel it all. When she finally spoke, it was quiet, barely above a whisper. They always knew, Lauren, she said, not looking at me. Mom and Dad. About Rick. They always knew. I froze. What do you mean they knew? They knew, she said again. There were signs, texts, even a coworker tried to tell them once. But they told me it was just gossip. They said I shouldn't jeopardize my brand by overreacting. They didn't want it to get out. They didn't want me to look weak. My stomach dropped, not because I was shocked, because I wasn't, but because I realized how deep the rot had gone. It wasn't just Rick. It wasn't just Chloe. It was all of them. The entire family had been built on this fragile, glittering lie of perfection, and now that it was cracking, they were crawling back to me like I was supposed to patch it up with duct tape and forgiveness. But I wasn't the same Lauren anymore, and this time, I wasn't fixing anything. I didn't say anything the night Chloe confessed that our parents had known about Rick. I let her cry, let her collapse into herself like someone who'd finally realized the dream house she built was made of cardboard and soaked in gasoline. She didn't ask me to forgive her, and for once, she didn't ask me to help her either. Maybe she finally understood I had nothing left to give. Maybe she knew that after decades of being expected to carry the emotional weight of our family on my back, I'd dropped it like a lead suitcase and walked away with nothing but the clothes on my soul. The next morning, after she left my apartment wrapped in silence and shame, I opened the kitchen drawer where I'd tossed the birthday card they sent me a week after Chloe's Hawaiian circus. I hadn't touched it since it arrived, still sealed in its cheap, glittery envelope with my name scrawled on the front like an afterthought. There was no return address, no apology written on the outside, just a flimsy gesture wrapped in pastel paper. It was postmarked 8 days after Chloe's birthday, like they'd suddenly remembered they had another daughter whose birthday might matter, once the champagne wore off and the vacation glow faded. I didn't open it. I never planned to. Instead, I walked it straight to the trash can, lifted the lid, and dropped it inside without a single flicker of hesitation. Then I took a picture of it right there, unopened, sitting between a banana peel and last night's coffee grounds. I sent it to the family group chat I'd left weeks ago, but this time I made sure they'd all see it. I didn't write a long explanation. Just a single line. This was your love. And it still came second. Within minutes, my phone lit up like a firework factory in July. First was Mom, an explosion of defensive apologies wrapped in guilt-drenched pleasantries, the kind of message someone writes when they want to look like they're apologizing without admitting they ever did anything wrong. She wrote, "That's not fair, Lauren. We were going through a lot. Things were complicated. We love you equally." I almost laughed. The same kind of love that forgets your birthday and remembers it after Maui and a $1,000 bracelet? That kind of love was counterfeit. Sentimental Monopoly money passed off as real until you tried to spend it on something that mattered. Then came Dad's message, shorter and sadder. "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I wasn't strong enough to push back." That one actually made me pause. Because I believed him. I believed he hadn't been strong enough. But being weak doesn't make you innocent. It just makes your silence complicit. And then Chloe. A voice memo. Her voice hoarse, thick with grief and old wounds I couldn't fix. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I don't know who I was trying to be. I wanted them to see me the way they always saw you, as someone who didn't mess up. Turns out I was the mess the whole time. But it wasn't until a week later that the final cracks in the illusion truly began to split open. It started with a news alert someone forwarded to me, an article buried on a local business site about an ongoing investigation into Rick's financial dealings. Apparently, he hadn't just been cheating on Chloe with women. He'd been cheating the IRS too. Multiple flags for tax evasion, shady shell companies, falsified charitable donations. It wasn't just a moral collapse. It was a legal one. Then came the dominoes. Dad lost his job 3 years ago but never told anyone outside the house. Had been quietly cashing out pieces of his retirement, pretending everything was fine while Mom kept up the charade of their polished country club life. The Maui trip? Paid for by Rick's company card, which was now frozen pending a full audit. The Cartier bracelet? Bought on a credit line opened under Chloe's name that she didn't even know existed until the bills started coming in. Their entire image, the one I'd been shoved out of for being too loud or too real or too unwilling to play along, had been stitched together with secrets and lies, and now the seams were tearing in public view. They tried to cover it up, of course. Chloe deleted all her vague posts. Mom posted a photo of the family dog with some cliché caption about clinging to joy in difficult times. But the damage had already soaked through. I didn't respond again. Not for days. Not when they asked me to come to dinner and talk things out. Not when they offered to start over as if forgiveness could be scheduled like a brunch. Not even when Dad asked me to help him talk to a lawyer, because you always know what to say when things go sideways. That used to be true. But that version of me, the fixer, the mediator, the therapist with a family discount, she was gone. I finally wrote back one last time, this time with no photo, no drama, just the truth. I'm not coming back to help clean this up. I didn't burn this house. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already on fire. Then I turned off my phone, sat by the window, and watched the sky turn from blue to bruised orange as the sun sank behind the buildings. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. Just finished. Not with bitterness, but with the clarity that comes when you finally see something for what it always was. And yet, even with all of it behind me, or at least enough of it, I found myself thinking the same question over and over again, one I didn't have the answer to and maybe never would. When your family only loves the version of you that stays silent, do they love you at all? The question hung in the air, unanswered, and I let it.